facilitation practice. We started doing that in the pandemic, and then we kept doing it. And it's amazing because sometimes we have a big crowd, sometimes we have a small crowd, and usually when it's a small crowd, I love it because we can, really go into the content and discuss and have more like, private conversation. I like that. Even though it's recording, but here we are. And so we are going to be together for 90 minutes, and just be aware of all alerts you have surrounding you in your devices and emails, WhatsApp, all of that. And chat, we may use the chat as we want. And Fernand suggests that we can have this multi-speaker view in Zoom. So
It's a
it's a
new.
nice way to see the practice. And
Yeah,
anything else, Fernando?
no, just introducing Zoe. We were just recollecting from our memories. We met in 2009, ages ago, face to face, working with people in a room in Brazil. Now we are in Canada and Australia. We're still connected. So, yeah, pleasure to have you, Zoe. And we also share this admiration for Kaospilot methods. So, I was your student in Brazil in a part one. And yeah, I'm looking forward to learn more with you. So, welcome, and please share your wisdom with us.
Thank you. Thanks, Carol and Fernando, and Shannon and Marisa. So great to see you here. And yeah, I also, I think what we're talking about today of meaningful learning experiences, meaning is really personal. So it's kind of nice to have a smaller group to explore that together, and we'll adapt as we go. Before we do kick off, I'd really like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands where we're all joining from today. Here I'm in Melbourne, and I'm joining you from the traditional lands of the Bunurong people of the Kulin Nation. And I'd like to just pay my respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging, and really acknowledge and honor their millennia-age tradition of meaningful learning experiences. We're really privileged here in Australia to have the oldest living culture in the world. And talk about being able to pass on knowledge, no PowerPoint slides, no written word, through oral tradition and experiences. So I really want to honor that tradition, and how it might inspire us in our work, and also honor the traditional owners of the lands wherever you're joining us from, and also your own cultural roots and heritage as well. And maybe just before we kick off, would be, given that we do have a small group, it would be nice to just hear a little bit about what drew you to the session today. Yeah, that'd be a nice kind of way just to lean in.
Hi, I'm Marisa. I am an instructional designer with a focus on experiential learning, and so or wherever possible. And I'm also helping out with the new book for Liberating Structures, doing some design work behind the scenes. And so I just gotten excited about, and also took the immersion with Carolina and Fernando, and so got excited about all things liberating structures and want to know more.
Thank you. Welcome.
I am Shannon, and I am an education program manager for a nonprofit organization. I facilitate trainings for the community on fetal alcohol spectrum disorder. I also facilitate courses on domestic violence, as well as other substance use and how it impacts families. And my audience can be individuals who are raising someone with an FASD, or it could be someone maybe who has it, and then professionals who work with families. So it's really varied, and all of it's online. Pretty much everything I do is Zoom unless I go present at a conference. So I somehow found you guys. I don't know. And like I said, I take every training of yours that I can. And if I have to miss it, I watch the video. I just did the learning arch design with Simon. That was great. So I'm here just to get better at what I do. And hope then that people, I always would say, if they come to a training, if they could leave with one thing, I feel like I did well. And I'm like, no, they should be able to leave with like 10 things, right? Depending what I'm facilitating. So what can I do better to help with that? So that's why I'm here.
Amazing. Thank you. I don't know, Fernando and Carol, if you wanted to share anything.
I always learn something in these gatherings from the guest presenters, from participants, for everybody. So that's why we keep doing these gatherings. It's so nourishing. So it's important for everybody. I think I learn better when people are working together. I learn more than just studying or reading. So that's why I keep coming and keep offering this space. Carolina.
It's good that you keep coming, because
Yeah.
you offer it.
I could delegate for someone. I can invite someone to do my job. No, that's my part.
I'm just kidding. And for me, it's like Kaospilot, so Fernando's more into it, and he comes and say things, and and I was like, oh, there's this and there's that, and so I'm very curious about it. And so every time that I have the chance to learn more about Kaospilot, so I'm here for that. So thank you, Zoe.
No, amazing. Thank you all. And yeah, really looking forward to sharing particularly from the Kaospilot toolkit, and also some our work with their approach to experience design principles, and how they can really support learning that matters, and learning that transforms, and it sounds like that's something that's a common passion that we share, which is awesome. So just checking that slides come up okay. Yes, awesome. So today's intention, it's really to introduce the Kaospilot model for experience design, which connects very well with what you would have heard Simon talk about, Shannon. And obviously, we recently held a 3-day immersion on the program, on the model, sorry, which we consider an introduction. So we're gonna get a bit of a taste of it today. But as Fernando said earlier in the week, hopefully it's a juicy taste. And yeah, deep dive into some real examples. So from my own work, and then be great. And I think with a small group, we can get stuck into how do we deep dive into maybe one component of that, which is often maybe forgotten in my experience in learning design, and see how that could, you could leave with some new ideas about how to approach something that you're working on. And obviously feel free to put things in the chat, or also, come off audio and share it as well as we go. So just for you, as I said, I'm going to be sharing the Kaospilot model. So I'm the co-director of Alkimia Learning, based here in Australia, and we're the local partners for Kaospilot. And I'm going to be sharing their model today. So Kaospilot's been around for 30 plus years, and its purpose has really been to be the best school for the world. So to create positive societal change through transformational education experiences. And, the model I'm going to share with you today comes from that 30 years of trial and error. And a Kaospilot is someone who can navigate in times of turbulence and complexity. Not that anyone's going through that, right? And turn dreams and ideas into sustainable projects. So that's kind of a little bit about the mission of the school. And you can see there the 4 pillars of its approach. It's experimental, experiential, explorative, and enterprising, just to give you a bit of the flavor. And I'm just going to share it's a 40-second video, but I think it's the application, it's the call for applications for people to join the Kaospilot's 3-year flagship program. And I guess it just gives a little bit of the flavor of, the origins of the model and mindsets that I'm going to be sharing today. So the sound worked when we tested it. Let's see if it cooperates. Again, just give me a heads up, a thumbs up if it works.
Have you ever wondered whether the conventional way of educating
is really the best way to do it?
More and more employers are starting to focus on skills.
College dropout rate is much higher.
Actually putting college off, dropping out, or not going at all.
Imagine going to a school where you can chase your dreams, where young people with bright minds have the time of their lives while studying how to contribute to a better world.
You will learn everything about regenerative leadership, setting up projects across the world, or creating your own business. The Kaospilot education is not defined by grades, but by your own students, their ideas, and their approach. We're not the ones with the right answers, but we're the ones with the right questions.
So, I'm going to ask you a question.
Alrighty. So just give you a little bit of a glimpse, I guess, of the context or what the approach comes from.
Have you ever wondered whether the
This was enough. So a bit of an overview of the session today then, and Shannon, you'll recognize some arches here from Simon's approach. So today's all about how do we apply experience design principles to learning. We're in this initial kind of set the stage phase here of an overview, and in a second I'm going to do a bit more of a connection as well. Then we're going to do a bit of an intro to experience design and the 5E model. Through and including some examples from some projects I've worked on, and then get a turn for a deep dive into one aspect of the model and your chance to apply it to something that you're working on, or to maybe think about something you've done recently and how you could apply this there. And then just kind of a bit of a landing of some key shifts and a checkout. So that's kind of what the journey that awaits us. And, we're always launching and setting more arches than what we managed to land in one session. But, that's really about helping more people design experiences that enable people and relationships to grow so that we can transform together through learning that matters is what it's all about for us. So bit of connection before content. So I don't know if you have a chance to grab a photo quickly or not, but it's okay if you don't. But idea is to just to share around what's when you think of a meaningful or even transformational moment or experience that you've had recently, what was that? What comes to mind straight away? You don't have to think about it too hard. And kind of unpacking it a little bit, what made it meaningful or transformational for you. I think Shannon and Marisa, if you're okay with it, we don't have to go into breakouts. We can just share here if that's okay. I can obviously I had the opportunity to grab a photo earlier, so I'll just quickly share what this one is. But this is a photo from my wedding. We actually had wedding Olympics 2 days before the actual ceremony. And the reason why this photo is so meaningful, the reason we did Olympics is because my husband's originally from the Dominican Republic. We lived in Brazil for a long time. Very fortunate to have a friendship group that's very multilingual. And we didn't want to have these like language ghettos at our wedding. We wanted that value of community was really important to us. So we thought, what's a way that people who don't necessarily have a language in common can connect, and games was the answer for us. So we organized the Wedding Olympics, and here is me presenting a gold medal to a Brazilian friend and my husband's Dominican cousin, who paired up for the beach volleyball and won the gold medal at our Wedding Olympics. And so that's a really symbolic and meaningful moment for me, of just kind of, an example of how we're able to really achieve that towards that kind of goal of community and connection for people that, didn't know each other before the wedding. But yeah, I'm curious to know, and yeah, no stress if a photo is too much of an ask. But yeah, I'd be curious to know what comes to mind for you when you think about a recent meaningful or transformational moment or experience.
I'm going to have to go back in time because I haven't had a chance to really think about something recent. But a bunch of years ago, I was working with a program of called Adobe Youth Voices, and was able to test something they were working on where we could create collaborative videos across the world with young people. And so I was able to bring in a poet to create the overlaying structure of the project, and then have young people, I don't remember how many anymore, but maybe, I don't know, about 50 young people create pieces of the video so that the overall was, of course, much larger and more amazing than the bits, and they were able to see it live as they were creating it. So that really inspired me.
Amazing. And what was it that stands out to you from that what made it meaningful, Marisa, would you say?
The cross-cultural connection, the small pieces that became larger by adding them together, and the creativity, just the range of creativity and the, what people brought to the project.
No, it's beautiful. Thank you. What came to mind for you, Shannon?
Well, I just this week, in addition to the things that I just said I do, I also help put together, I manage a statewide conference that we do every 2 years. And then on the off year, we do a grantee meeting for all the grant programs that receive funding from the state early childhood education. And so myself and my supervisor work with a committee of 3 people. And we recently had to do like a save the date email and go through all this process. And they're like, we have to check it. There were 37 emails between us for what should have been a very simple save the date email. And so much so that one of the people on my comms team who has to help with some of this said to me, I suggest they send their own emails from now on. I was like, I'm with you, but like we're paid to do this, right? And so we had a meeting on Monday with the committee and like talked through the process and how it went and how it worked. And for me, it was such a good reminder. We just work with them. There was some frustration there, but the realization that at that state level and with this department and with, I don't know if you've all heard, but here in the States in our current administration, we have some challenges. And to realize how much back stuff they're having to deal with. Right. Like I'm looking at them as the committee and like, so make this decision, do this, but they're in the back trying to handle and deal with like all the politics that are going on there and all of the things. And for me, it was just a really good, like, check yourself, Shannon. Like it was a meaningful from a space of, I can appreciate now better what they're struggling with and dealing with and how that translates to trying to work with us and get these things done and what challenges they're facing. So asking myself, so what can I do on my end to like be able to support them in the process they have to deal with? So that was one of the first things that came to mind.
Yeah, thank you. And as I was listening to you talk, that the value of a reframe, right, can often kind of help bring an extra layer of meaning or kind of transform how we're seeing a situation. Which yeah, I'll get to in a sec, but it's something that we talk about in the Kaospilot model as well. So thank you for working out loud and having your breakout with us there. And I think this kind of, it's a nice warm up for us to think and to realize, as I mentioned, that meaning is super personal. and the models and the frameworks, etc., the tools that I'm gonna be sharing are, they're always contextual, as you just really highlighted, Shannon. And they're just, they're ways to help us have some shortcuts of trying to create the conditions for something meaningful and transformational to occur through the learning experiences that we offer. So to help us think about, really what is an experience, love you to grab pen and paper, just some scrap paper. If you've got something there, everybody able to doodle. All right. So you're going to have 1 minute, and I'd love you to design a house, please. Or if I was more prepared, I'd have some drawing music. Have
live music. It's much better.
Oh, I've got the choir I'm in is putting on a show in 2 weeks. I could practice some of my.
Oh.
Don't know if I want that in the recording. The theme of our show is dreams. It's going to be fun. All right, 20 more seconds. Designing a house. Alrighty. Okay. And your next design challenge. Design a way of feeling at home. 1 minute for that as well. What does feeling at home look like on paper? Not thinking music.
And welcome again.
The video from Simon.
Sorry about that. Oh, 10 seconds. Sorry. Got distracted by that. All right. So yeah, not a drawing competition. But yeah, I'd love if you can to kind of show us a little bit, what does and talk us through, what did your house look like compared to feeling at home? What did feeling at home look like?
I don't know if I was jumping into part 2, but they were kind of the same. It's pretty small. So, but basically my house included a dog and a big window and a hammock outside and an art table and a door, because I thought you should probably be able to get in and out. And then being at home was kind of similar, just the same sort of pieces of the same, like a big table with things to work on, mess, and a dog.
Thank you. How about you, Shannon or
And a dog. Well, I did more. Let's see, can you see it? I drew, but then I wrote everything because I was like, I don't think I can draw all of that. How many bedrooms I wanted, how many bathrooms, kind of how I wanted it laid out, open kitchen, living, lots of windows, so I can have a lot of plants, a nice yard with trees and a garden. And then for feeling at home, a heart that surrounds it, and plants, books, and I put a pen so I can journal, and then people, so we can, I mean, I want people that are important to me there, but we could entertain. And then I also put a little puppy paw because eventually I'm sure there'll be a pet of some sort in the home.
Mhm.
My girlfriend wants that. It's fine. It's fine.
Thanks, Shannon. I don't know if Carol, Fernando, you did any sketching or?
I did. So like the house was more like this is kind of, I don't know, like, you know, I don't know, a lot of windows, a lot of like one door, but a lot of like rooms, and I tried to do that. And here was more like, oh, how I feel at home. So the four of us together, the two dogs, and also laying down on the couch, you know, like just doing nothing, meditating. So it's this kind of, you know, like this good feeling of being home. And the house was hard, you know, because it was like, what, like how I'm gonna design it is like inside, outside, or, you know, like, anyway, it was like the feeling was easier for me at least.
Interesting. Nice. Thank you. And I don't know, Fernando, anything you kind of noticed or just hearing the
just looking at the house is very objective, right? And the other drawing is much more subjective.
Yeah, it's interesting. I do a different activity designing houses, and it doesn't matter. I think I've done it in about 30 countries, and everywhere around the world, the first house people draw looks pretty much the same. There's this like weird universal idea, even though people afterwards look and go, actually, the houses here don't look like that. And so, yeah, you know, definitely, I think that sense of a home, you know, the house is really the form, and it's really more structure, and the feeling at home, it explores that idea of experience. There's people, there's more subjectivity, there's more more feeling, more emotion, right? More connection to that. And that's just a little, you know, exercise to introduce the kind of difference. And I think often in the learning and training world, we can get a bit too focused on the form and on the format and the platform and the content, and it's really easy, and the learning objectives, and it can be really easy to forget about that feeling, of thinking of it as an experience for people. And, you know, Andy Sontag, who's the head of experience design program at Kaospilot, you know, he often says, you know, everything is experience. And I guess the question is, you know, whether we want to be intentional about what that experience is for people or not, right? Or leave it to chance, or leave it to default, and just how powerful it can be when we are intentional, when we do, you know, take steps to make it a more meaningful experience. And just wanted to share a bit of a framework that Matt Dwerden, who's a department head at Brigham Young University, as part of research that he's working on right now, but it's thinking about different types of experiences. So giving us a little bit of a sense of what ingredients we might want to aim for. So his research is saying that, you know, if we want a memorable experience, emotions, baseline component, right? There has to be that emotional connection to help us remember, for it to be memorable. Kind of moving up the ladder, you know, if we want it to be meaningful, that's really that baseline of emotions plus some insights, some ahas, some reframes, right? Some new ways of thinking about the topic, about the subject at hand. And then, you know, going beyond that again, if we can have emotions plus insights plus some kind of change of self-perception or some kind of change in behavior, that's when we can really say that something is more transformational. And so, yeah, if you're not familiar with Matt Dwerden's work, he's a great person to follow and learn from. And he's been partnering with Andy in particular on this research, and they're using a big project they're doing with the Lego group to kind of help validate and refine some of their work. But it just also gives us a sense of, okay, what might be some of those core ingredients or components that we want to be aiming for. And, you know, sometimes, you know, we can also challenge and say, well, does everything need to be transformational? Probably not. But, you know, given just some of the examples that you've shared today about your work, I'd say that, you know, transformational is probably the goal that you'd be aiming for, I would say, and the fact that they're here today. So how can we really make it matter, make those times matter, and play a bit with these ingredients. And, you know, Andy is as I said, the program director for experience design at Kaospilot. And so when we think about, you know, if we want to be intentional about the experiences that we're designing, you know, because there's always, for example, a customer experience, right? Whether it's a good one or bad one is a different question, but there's always an experience. And it's the same with learning or training. You know, experience design is about having a bit of a method for how can we frame experiences in a way that change how people feel, act, and think. And again, it's all about creating those conditions. And we all know very well that we can't control what somebody's going to get out of an experience, but it's how do we, you know, help increase the chances that it's the kind of experience that we want, and create those conditions. And, you know, Kaospilot, when it, you know, its ambition and Alkimia's, you know, we're really aiming to how do we design experiences that grow people and grow relationships, you know, at the core. And, you know, when we talk about growing people, we're talking about in that holistic sense. You know, there's this German concept, and my pronunciation is probably going to be wrong, of Bildung, right? Of that sense of that holistic growth. So not just that upward ambition and stretch, but also that strengthening of the roots and the character and the inner development and work as well. So that vertical as well as horizontal development, and the growing of relationships, and, you know, shared experiences is a really powerful way of doing that. And, you know, I think, you know, we've talked a little bit about context already, right? But there's a lot of reasons, why there's a, you know, a real urgency, I think, and importance for the work that we all do, for big shifts in learning, to be able to tackle, you know, some of that chaos and turbulence and complexity that's around us. You know, there's I haven't read it, but an interesting book I was made aware of this week, The Pedagogy at the End of the World. I don't know if anybody's come across that, but, you know, it really frames that there's a learning emergency, right? Given the complexity and the newness of the challenges that we're facing as humanity, as a planet, that there's this really deep, urgent need for meaningful learning that helps humans to raise their level of consciousness and shift and grow in these ways. So, you know, a really big importance for this work that we're doing. So how can we be more intentional? How can we make it matter more? And yeah, and the 5E experience model is, I guess, Kaospilot's response to that as a framework and mindsets to help us be more intentional about the learning experiences that we're creating for folks. And so I think there's no better person to describe a model than the author of that said model. So I'm just going to quickly switch what I'm sharing. Oh, no, not like that. Here we go. And hopefully be able to see this one. So this is Andy, aforementioned Andy, and he's just going to do a really quick overview of the 5E model, and not just talk about, so the actual idea of thinking about an experience from excitement, which is before it even starts, to extension, which is after it, you know, officially ends, is built on the work of, oh my goodness, I've forgotten his first name, Mr. Pine. who's you know, a famous kind of thinker in the experience economy world. And yeah, so this short video, Andy's going to explain the, you know, how he builds on that basic 5E model and adds these layers. So let me share sound. Okay.
The 5E model with you. It's beautiful model, and hopefully you'll learn it by heart after using it. So the 5E model is used to design meaningful experiences, and yeah, I'm just going to take you step by step through it. So the first step is the excitement. It's the way that someone first becomes aware of and is attracted to the experience. It's what captures their attention. An example of that is a wedding invitation. In these initial phases, you really want to think about this 90% rule, how you can prime people to have the right expectations when they enter your event. 90% of what makes a gathering or an experience a success happens before it begins, says the legendary facilitator and experience designer Priya Parker. Then you have the entry. This is actually the moment when people enter into your experience. It's when they leave the city street and walk into a restaurant, for example, walking from one context to the other. And a mindset you want to have here is that relationships are built from shared experiences. More meaningful shared experiences build and deepen a relationship. So really think about what experiences can you trigger right away so that the people walking into your experience get a positive relationship, get connection. We'll talk about connection before content here. Then you have the engagement, which is the main activities that capture the attention of the participant. It's really like if you're going to a restaurant, it's the main course. It's why people are there. This is pictures from my wedding, and instead, this is my good friend Robin. Instead of a Toastmaster, he was a story master, and we designed the whole wedding using this model, which is basically just adding like a story arc to the whole experience. And stories are just like adding a story arc is incredibly powerful to driving that people will be more likely to remember what they experienced and more likely to want to repeat it. There's a lot of good stuff there. So add a story arc into the engagement. And really one practical tip in terms of how you do that is really adding one climax, one high point in the experience. And we'll talk more about that in just a moment. Now in the exit. The exit is the clear end of the designed experience. And again, that clear high point, we also want a clear ending. Amazing research by Daniel Kahneman. He won the Nobel Prize for this research, showed that people primarily remember the peak and the end of an experience. So these are two very important moments to design. So remember in the exit, the peak end rule. And the extension you have here, which is a physical or digital object that the participant can take with them to extend the experience. Here's an example from an online training that I did where the participants wrote haikus for each other in the training, and then after the training was over, they shared them on our sort of our WhatsApp. And yeah, so one of the mindsets here with the extension is that you really want to integrate it into the actual design of what you're doing, not just giving people a piece of chocolate at the end, right? And yeah, that was the 5E model. So you have the excitement, the entry, the engagement, the exit, and the extension. These all 5 E's that sort of are guided and held together by your meaningful outcomes. So yeah, have fun. Always start designing for feelings, how you want people to feel, and then move into more concretely what you want to have happen. Enjoy using the model. So excited to see how you use it.
Cool. So yeah, so that was that quick overview of the 5 E's and the different mindsets, and kind of you start to get a sense of some of the different tools you can layer in with each of them. I know for me personally, before I came across the 5E model, I realized that essentially as a learning designer, I was really only focused on the engagement part. I thought a little bit about the invitation, but not to the extent that I should have. And that, having that clear entry that like, oh, I'm crossing some kind of threshold and entering a different space now. Didn't really think about that. And that peak moment exit, and definitely didn't think about the extension. So I think already, just having those 5Es, I think it gives us just a bigger platform for impact, right? To think about what we're offering as learning designers in a more holistic way. So that's that quick overview of the 5Es, which we're going to keep coming back to. And I think the other thing that Andy mentioned there, which is really important, is another kind of difference, and a thing that repeatedly we hear back from people, is a bit of a game changer for them in this approach, is before getting to the activities, before getting to the what's going to happen, is taking the time to zoom out and map that emotional journey. So what do we want people to be feeling at each of those 5 stages? What's that? What are those feelings that we really want to try to elicit, create space, conditions for? And there's a really nice quote from a Dutch designer, which says, if the meaningful outcome is the sunshine, the emotional journey is the fertile soil from which experience grows. And so it's really that idea of, okay, we want to realize these meaningful outcomes. So what's that emotional journey going to look like? And then, that's a great guide for then thinking, okay, cool. So then how do we choose from all of the, as I think someone mentioned earlier, right? That idea of less is more. From all of those different things we could be doing, what are the ones we really want to make sure happen, that really help to create the conditions for that emotional experience. So in terms of, sorry, I just realized I'm not sharing my slides anywhere, am I? Let me quickly bring it up so you can see what I'm talking to. There we go. So this is that, that the model kind of broken down into a bit of a template. And the kind of the order of the steps that we take is 1, getting really clear on what are the meaningful outcomes. So what's that deepest emotional impact that we want to have people to have from the experience? Then kind of mapping that emotional journey. So what we want them to feel. And then getting to the what happens. So again, that's a bit of a mindset shift. Often we kind of get caught up a lot in the logistics and the what happens before considering those other components. So I wanted to try to just exemplify that a little bit, if that's okay, unless there's any kind of questions so far, or maybe giving an example will be a good way to go. So I just wanted to share, and you won't be able to see the detail, and that's okay. But just to give a bit of a sense, so how I've used the 5E model. So depending on the program, depending on the client, a lot of different factors. Sometimes, there's an awareness up front that we're really trying to, we're going beyond learning, and we're trying to we're wanting to create an experience. And so we start with the 5Es, and then we dig down into the engagement phase, so the learning aspect. And that's where I always bring in the learning arches that you would have seen, Shannon, into how that looks like. And other times, like the example I'm going to show you now, the client his focus and preoccupation is on the learning outcomes and objectives. And so we design that first, and then add the layer of experience design to it, to really dial up the impact. So I'll just, like I said, you won't be able to see the detail, but just to give you a sense. So here's a real Miro board for a client we worked with. So again, can't see the detail, that's okay. But this is how we mapped out. This is a 10-month a 10-month blended project leadership essentials program that we designed, that we co-designed. So you can see there's a combination of face-to-face and on-the-job modules over a 10-month period. So that was our, we co-designed that with the client. And then we said, okay, great. How can we now dial up the impact through using experience design? So we did a 5E design sprint with the client with some people from our alumni network. And we just took the first workshop, so the first 3-day face-to-face workshop, and we added in the 5E layer. So we identified what were those meaningful outcomes that we wanted for the workshop. And then we went down, and this is the brainstorm, right? And I think this is an important kind of message as well, is that importance of diverging, first of all. So together we did, we used the 5 E's. What's the feeling journey? We brainstormed together. And then we brainstormed what are all different ways we could bring that about. So in aiming for those meaningful outcomes and to create the conditions for those feelings, that emotional journey, what could we do? What are all the different ways we could do that? Knowing already, the logistical constraints, etc. So we did that work. And, one thing that I think pleasantly surprised me, it's the first time that I'd worked with a client in that way, is that, they were able to get that idea of the 5 E's like relatively quickly, with a bit of guidance. And they really loved what we could do in terms of like adding that layer on. So it wasn't something that we had to do a whole lot of education around, or it didn't take a lot of cognitive load for that to be understood. So we're able to brainstorm really effectively together. And actually the alumni that brainstormed with us, she also had limited knowledge of of all the other details. So we didn't have to really go a lot through it. She could just jump in. So I wanted to then just share a little bit, okay, so then what did we do with that big brainstorm and how did it kind of pan out? So the meaningful outcomes we had were community, enlightenment, and accomplishment.
Zoe, the screen, it's like half of the screen.
Oh, sorry about that. Thank you.
Not sure if you open the full side.
I thought it was like a beautiful image.
Yeah, that's the background of Sequoia.
I was like, oh, that's awesome.
Okay, how about now?
Now it's good.
Better?
Yeah.
Then
All right.
was
Thank you for that. Yeah, so the meaningful outcomes that that we were aiming for, and I'll share the reference in a sec, but this comes from the work of Nathan Shredoff, who's through researching with hundreds of thousands of people, identified 15 core universal meanings. So, community is all about that sense of belonging, connection with others. Accomplishment is about achieving goals and making something of oneself. And enlightenment is in this context is that idea of a clear understanding through both logic or inspiration. So when they really thought through, that were the kind of core meaningful outcomes that we wanted as a group for the program. And, then when we mapped, okay, what are the core what's that emotional journey we really want the participants to have? And again, this is just in the first workshop, right, of the 10-month program. So we really wanted them to feel supported, that they're meant to be here. They feel curious, they belong, over the 3 days, that they felt safe, they felt challenged, and they felt open to change. Exit, they felt special. Again, that feeling of belonging was really clear. And that extension after the workshop, that they felt seen, heard, respected, and that they want more. Like, I want to keep learning. There's that hunger. And so I just chose some of the key things that we chose to do from our massive brainstorm, just to give you some ideas how these things connect. So in that excitement phase, people, the participants were coming from all over the country. So some of them knew each other, some of them didn't, but they're from different spots. So we used one of those Secret Santa generators for them to be randomly allocated a buddy. And they had to do a check-in call. So gave them some some fun questions, some serious questions, just to check in, and they notice like, oh, someone's going to notice if I'm there or not. And I'm connecting with at least one other person. They co-created a playlist for the program. So it was like, I think the question was, what's a song that gives you energy? What's a song that, gets you started, gets you going? So they co-created that. And we got them to listen to that playlist in the minivan on the 1 hour ride from the airport to the venue, for example. And then we used that playlist throughout the workshop. So it was songs that we knew they resonated. Again, they're co-creating, they're having a role. They didn't know the location. It was kept as a surprise. Again, that curiosity, where are we going to go? So when they got on the minivan, I'll show you in a second what the ticket looked like. We gave them we created a ticket for them. And the venue was a scout camp. So it was very basic accommodation, but we put little chocolates on their bunk beds. And you got to imagine these are big, burly, like blue collar workers that are in this event. So we had like this little touch of the chocolates on the bunk beds. And then during those 3 days, so we used the 15 toasts tool that I learned from Priya Parker, where everybody had to do a toast to courage. So tell a story about a time when they'd shown courage, because that's what we wanted them to feel safe and challenged. We had a metaphor of, balanced project leadership is about having a balanced stool. So they physically built a stool from IKEA together. We used Troika Consulting because we wanted them to feel like really grounded, that we're going to address their real problems and challenges in this program. A bit of a peak moment was an escape rooms experience. And throughout the 3 days, they had to form cleaning crews and they had to do work together and be of service to the rest of the group. The exit, we actually got them to co-create the ceremony for the exit. And they created a cohort code that they wanted to live by. And I think a really special element of this program is we created, like Pokemon Go cards or baseball player cards, etc. We created cards of each of them with harvesting key things that they identified during the workshops. So just a visual on those two. So the entry. So this is the bus ticket that we created. So they were departing, the destination was unknown. We're keeping that curiosity. But there were conditions for travel, right? Relax, enjoy the tunes, connect with others, get comfortable with discomfort, arrive with curiosity. The ticket price was 3 days of full attention, and they had to accept that to get on the minivan. And then I don't know how clearly you can see, but these are the trade-up cards that we created. So that's each participant had a card where they, throughout the 3 days of the program, they identified their genius, what's their learning edge, what are their power-ups, what do they do to help keep their energy, etc. And they received those at the end of the program. And I can say that we had grown men crying. We had grown like blue collar men crying at the emotional and how touched they felt, which is awesome to see, and that vulnerability that they shared. They didn't like sleeping in bunk beds, but they but these kind of things helped them overcome some of those things that maybe would have been a big issue. But yeah, got great feedback, and we're now at we're about in 2 weeks, we're going to do the second workshop after a 3-month break. So, we're doing that same thing again and trying to really, use that approach. So it's just a little bit of a real example of how, like I said, we'd mapped the learning journey. And then we're like, okay, how do we really dial up the emotional impact, and particularly, those rare opportunities for people to get face-to-face, and then also, how can you do this virtually as well and create that connection. And so what I thought we could do for a bit of a practice is actually to deep dive into what I think is often the forgotten E, and that's extension, right? And it's that thing of how do we keep those meaningful outcomes and those feelings alive for people beyond your time together. So yes, that was my kind of thought for the a chance to practice is to think of a program that you're going to run, a learning experience that you're going to run, or maybe that you've run and you want to think differently next time. And we'll just kind of do a bit of a deep dive into that fifth E of extension. Does that sound okay? Or any questions that you wanted to ask?
It sounds good, but I'm a little hung up on the 90%, that Priya Parker quote. The before the experience even starts part, because if 90% of the experience is, if it's, you basically blow it if you don't get that first part right. And I certainly don't see when creating online learning how that can work, how that 90% can be very good. In person, actual experiences or in-person experiences is easier. So I just wondered if you either wanted to talk about that or had some ideas.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, great. Yeah, no, that's a great connection. And just that, I mean, obviously, this how we would measure that 90% is a bit different. Just I guess that concept, right? That the majority of it is gonna be set up before we even get there. Is that something that you like relate that you will relate to from your own experiences? Would you say like it makes sense that's a big component? Or
I don't know if it makes sense or it's just scary. Because I mean, when I think of we're talking the pre-experience, or not, it's not even the walking in onto the bus or whatever. It's the how you ended up there. And quite often how people end up in a lot of these experiences is because they're told to be there.
Right.
Or they fall into it, or yeah, but it's not often, or a manager promotes it, or a manager doesn't promote it, therefore. And so it's a worrisome statistic there. Now, I realize Priya Parker is also talking more about really cool parties, usually, at least the book that I read. But yeah.
Yeah, no, and I think what you said is a really great point, is that, we can sense the difference, right? When there are people who've chosen to be in a session, who have overcome some kind of hurdle to be there, versus the people who were told, who are mandated, who aren't really sure, who maybe had a different understanding or interpretation of like what it was about. And yeah, so I think there's definitely so for me it rings true that makes a difference. The thing that gives me and we don't always get to control that, right? Like if people are choosing to be there or not. I think for me, the thing that gives me hope that you can turn that around is the peak end rule. So, that other thing that Andy spoke to from Daniel Kahneman's research about what people remember after an experience is that idea of that peak moment and the end. So we do kind of get a chance to to shift things a little bit, because we're not always going to be in control of that. And I'd be really curious to hear any examples or that you've experienced or that you've seen work well, in terms of what you can, what is within your control in terms of excitement. I was just looking for a thing I had.
I'll share something here. I facilitate 6-part learning experience. There's 6 sessions, 1 hour each session. I facilitate it, but I have an expert come in and do the presentation. And Marissa, I'm with you. I train child welfare workers, and they're required to get X number of hours of training a year. Their fiscal year ends in June. So 2 things happen. One, we do not train July, August, September. And then starting in mid-April, May, June, our classes get very full and huge wait lists. And oftentimes it's people just having to pick where they can get in. So they might not even be interested in the topic, right, when they come. So I hear you, and I love that you asked this question, but I was just thinking, one of the ones that I do, one of the people who shares, she starts every time with a song, and she plays the video. It's from the movie The Greatest Showman. I don't know why I can't think of it. And I know it's coming every single time, even as the facilitator. And I'm still sitting there like dancing and getting chills and loving it. And so I have actually been playing with a little bit lately, because kind of like when we were all coming on here, right? Those first 5 minutes, usually I say we'll start in 5 minutes. I do messages in the chat, and I'm like, I should put some music. Like, that's even just a spot to kind of change it a little bit. And another thing that I was just thinking about too, I can do this with some of my trainings, but not all of them, is I just registered for a training, and after I registered for it, they're like, hey, take just a minute, fill out this form, let us know a little bit about you so we can think about it while we're doing the training. Do they read those or not? I don't know. But it made me look at that training already, right? I'm not even there, but I'm like, wow, that's really cool that they took the time to ask this. And you bet yourself that I already have created a Google form of my own for my FASD trainings, where it's such a wide audience that I don't know who's going to be there, to have that there. So to me, those are like kind of two examples that I'm thinking of that can help create, like, I'm looking at it from not so much getting them there. They're already there. That most of them are there because they have to be, and or hopefully want to be. But it's, what do I do once I now have them in the screen, or that little bit of setup before is how I'm thinking about it.
Yeah, great. Thanks for those examples. And I think yeah, be interesting to make a bit of a flow chart or a mind map, even thinking about, okay, people have chosen to be there, they haven't. What, different things we might do. I think some of the things that have worked for me is really, and Fernando might remember from the masterclass, Kaospilot masterclass part 1. I don't know if Simon talked about it, Shannon, but this idea of creating a call to adventure. So how do we, often what we do is we frame the content as the hero. If we think of Joseph Campbell and the hero's journey, often we frame the content as the journey, right? As the hero. This is going to be the big savior. But when we, what I found helpful is, how can we create a call to adventure that puts the learner as the hero? So it's already framing them as they're going to get something. How do we think about them in their context, and what's this going to enable them to do? So they've like got this sense of agency and choice as well. And I can share, there's a really great one of my favorite examples of a call to adventure is from an alternative school in Spain called Team Labs, where they put together a really cool one. I'll find that link and share it. But yeah, that's one thing that I found helpful. The other one, if you can, and this isn't always possible, but I did, I've done a few, particularly in this hybrid world, remote, etc. I've done a few programs where we've been able to send a little physical item beforehand. So there's something there tangible, tactile, that it's like, oh, okay, what's that? And the power of envelopes is amazing. So you put an envelope with "do not open" on it. Oh my God, the curiosity is sparked. And what's inside might be super small and not that impressive, but that is already creating the excitement, right? So if that's possible, I found that helpful. That idea of connection and who else is going to be there, I've also found helpful. So, the example I gave where we were like, hey, here's the other people. Sometimes, program I did recently, we had a Notion home base for the program, and we did a like who's who in the zoo, and we just using LinkedIn profiles, put who else is going to be there. We didn't want people to have to fill in too much info, so we just pulled from what we could. just as a way of seeing who's going to be there, that if you can have that option for a little buddy chat. It was just a super informal thing. But again, it's like, oh, again, I'm like, oh, I want to talk. There's someone else there that I want to connect with. I think as well, any chance you can give for them to co-create in some way. So like I said, the playlist, you know, the program we just ran, a different program, but we used that same idea of a playlist. We had people say to us on the first day, I knew that these were going to be my people just from those songs that they put out. And like I listened to it in the car on the way there. I got, you know, so there's something about that, I think, there as well. And that idea of the future, you know, that call to adventure as well, that idea of a future self-vision. So like, imagine, you know, being able to do this afterwards, like what's that, you know, so they can kind of maybe get excited about that for themselves as well. Something I do, if it is a situation where they're like, people have been forced to be there, one thing I do is a slide, which is like a cartoon slide, and it's got someone that's sitting there like they're at the beach with a cocktail in their hand. It's like the images of a classroom, but one person's there with a cocktail in their hand in like their Hawaiian shirt. Another person's there dressed like a convict with like a ball and chain around their leg. Another person's there like super eager to learn with a notebook. And I just put it up there and I just go, no matter how you're arriving here today, maybe you're super eager to learn. Maybe you're like, great, I got a day off work. I'm in holiday mode. Maybe you feel like you're here under duress. However you're showing up, you're welcome. And I hope that by the end of our time together, you're gonna be feeling more like this, right? Just kind of acknowledging it. And then there's another great activity, which again, I can share the link for, called Cynics and Believers. I don't know if any of you've come across that. But it's, again, it's kind of like talking about the elephant in the room. Essentially, you get people to form pairs randomly. People on this side, you're going to take on the role of the cynic. I want you to, and you make it fun, right? I want you to really get into the role of the cynic. No matter what you're thinking here today about our time together today, really take on that role of the cynic, like get into that persona. One colleague I've done this with, she uses the Muppets personas to help, you know, like the grumpy old men in the Muppets that are like up the back criticizing everything. I want you to pretend you're those guys. So why is this session the biggest waste of everybody's time? Like, why is this just a waste of time? Other half of the room, I want you to really get into that mindset of the believer, like the I forget the name of the character from the Muppets, but the like super eager beaver energetic person. And this is the best thing that we can all be doing with our time right now. This is like, you're super passionate about us all being here together and you're so excited. Okay, get into your personas. Okay, now cynics, you're going to have 2 minutes to convince your partner of why this is a waste of time. And then you swap believers, you've got 2 minutes to convince that it's the biggest waste of time, right? Or vice versa. Then after that, and you tell people to have fun with it, like let it all out, and then shake that off. Okay, now cynics, believers. I usually start with the believers. Believers, tell me one thing that your cynic partner said that really hit true, that really, ooh, actually there's some wisdom in that. There's a nugget of truth in there somewhere. What was that one thing? And then we kind of harvest that, and then we reverse and say, okay, cynics, what's one thing that really rang true for what the believer said that you're like, oh yeah, that hit the spot. There's a bit of wisdom in that. And so we harvest that, and that's a way of kind of acknowledging that there are those different thoughts and feelings in the room. And if we can be mindful of these like pieces of wisdom from those two perspectives, then we can get more out of our time together. We can be real and we can be optimistic. And I just found, yeah, when it's groups that, yeah, they don't want to be there, that can kind of help be a nice little reset, to help them be excited, to help them feel seen, heard, respected. Yeah, if you haven't been able to build the much excitement before, then it's a bit of a kind of a like a, okay, let's start again now kind of thing. But yeah, I hope maybe those thoughts are a little bit helpful.
Thank you, and sorry to detour the
no
that The 90% stood out a lot to me. And I
Yeah.
mean, once I get people in the room, that's not as hard for my particular skills, but the before happens to be, yeah, it's often hard.
No, I think it's a great call out. And it's also, you know, how do we, you know, often, and this is the thing that like I really notice it when we don't really contract this up front with clients, particularly when they're responsible for the comms. Like it's different if it's our program and we're controlling or managing that whole process. You know, we're very mindful of like, yes, what is the invitation? What are we doing to help build that excitement? But when it's, you know, more that comms is done internally, yeah, that need to really guide them through that and make it really clear, like why people are there and what's the you know, all those things that we just talked about. So yeah, it's a really good call, I think. Just check the time. Alrighty. So we've got 10 minutes. Did you want me to share some examples of the other end of the of the E of extension? And just see if it might like spark some ideas, thoughts for your own programs. Because yeah, I don't know about yourselves, but often I find it really challenging when you have these awesome you know, interactions with people and then you kind of like poof, they disappear off into the distance and you never quite know like what happens. So I also find thinking about this rewarding from that opportunity to connect, and obviously really depends on the context, right? Like, you know, sometimes it does make sense that you're investing in maintaining connection between people as a community and their ongoing learning and et cetera, and sometimes that doesn't make sense. But yeah, so just as a, you know, the first step that we always do is what are those meaningful outcomes? So resisting that urge to start with logistics and activities, but starting with the meaningful outcomes. You know, these are the 15 core meanings that I mentioned earlier. I can share a link to this work, but that's work by Nathan Shedroff of, you know, what those core meanings are for you. And we usually kind of aim for 1 to 3 to kind of focus on. And then yeah, if we're thinking about this, you know, all this whole integrated journey is aiming at those meaningful outcomes. But you know, this idea of if we're digging into that extension phase, you know, what's that feeling we really want to capture? So like I said, for some context, you want that feeling of community and belonging to still stay beyond the program. For others, no, it's more about a sense of accomplishment, or it's more about, you know, that ongoing growth and enlightenment, or it could be beauty, or, you know, there's no right or wrong sense there. So just to give you, and in terms of, you know, sometimes it can be hard to like get beyond the mad, sad, bad kind of glad kind of feelings. So I always find it helpful to have a bit of a vocab to think about, you know, what are the different emotions that we could be aiming to kind of create conditions for. And Brene Brown's, you know, Atlas of the Human Heart is a good one that I like to use. So when we're thinking about extension, particular, it's that physical and digital object that's really there to take home, to help people take home and remember. And, you know, I think sometimes we kind of examples that we have are like swag, right, from conferences, which, you know, most of the time ends up in landfill. So not ideal. So we're not talking about that, right? We're not talking about, you know, crappy souvenirs. We're talking about something that really helps to synthesize the meaningful outcomes, something that reflects your values, something that you can actually integrate into the design of the experience itself. It's something they can help co-create, build, or add to the object throughout, for it to have that extra, be imbued with some extra meaning. So these are just some examples from work that we've done. So, you know, sometimes it can be more than just a name tag. So, you know, this is something that obviously people receive on the first day. So this is one edition of the Kaospilot Experience Design Program that we ran. And you can see the name tags, they're from one of our participants who lives in the area where we hosted, from his firewood. He chopped little pieces and burnt people's names into the little pieces of firewood, and that was their name tags. And I've spoken to quite a few participants, and that's, you know, been quite a, you know, it's from that place. It's made by one of the participants. That was quite a meaningful extension item for them. And in our last program, the facilitator handmade, these are like bits of plywood with people's name, and then on the back she randomly found quotes from magazines. So everybody had a different, she didn't know the people, most of them, different quote, and it's amazing how kind of meaningful those different quotes then became for folks throughout the program. Again, this isn't, none of these examples are going to work in every single context, but maybe it just like sparks a bit of idea. So we wore those, you know, all day for 3 days, right? So they've got a meaning there. How can you make the learning edge or the learning focus of somebody 3D? So in the Kaospilot program, we talk about that importance of head, heart, and hands, those layers, which you incidentally mentioned in your presencing at the very beginning, Carolina. So people choose, you know, what's their learning edge, what's their learning focus, and they get a badge for. So if the heart, the emotional side is the aspect they really need to work on, they choose that badge, and they've got that with them. So making that a 3D representation of the thing they're really trying to learn. This is from a dinner that we had at the program. So this is an example of integrating into the thing. So earlier in the program, people wrote a piece of advice that they would give their younger selves, and they put it on a card and they put their name on the back. And then when we came to dinner that night, everybody, you can see, had a place setting. And so I sat down at the table with Zoe on it, but I had somebody else's advice inside. And then I read out a piece of advice, and I shared, wow, what resonates with me in that piece of advice? And then the person that had written it, if they wish, they could share, like, where did that advice come from their own journey, from their own life. And then I got to keep those words of wisdom and take them with me. So, you know, that's very meaningful in terms of the advice itself, but where it came from. And this is an example from way back when, in the times of Santander, Fernando, when we first started working together. So, you know, an extension item then became an excitement item. So big merger, resetting the values mission of the human resources department. We had a 1-day session for that, as part of that engagement process in the new vision, in the new values. And the boss wanted it to be compulsory. And I said, no, I don't want to make it compulsory. I want to see if we can get everyone to sign up just through excitement. And so one of the activities we did that day was making pizza together. So when you completed the program, you got this name plaque, and this is pre-work from home days, right? So this is a magnetic plaque that people could put on their desk, so we could get to know each other. So that's what you gained as your extension item, and then people put that on their desk. And then the next day at work, everyone's like, hey, where did you get that from? I want one of those. You got to sign up for the HR Revolution program. So yeah, so that was a really fun way of that kind of creating that cycle between programs and doing that self-promotion. Yeah, so just some ideas, some little seeds. I'll share a link as well to a great compilation that Anna Maria Dorgo shared on LinkedIn, which has got some of these examples as well. And I know we're just about out of time, so I'm going to stop sharing and whoops. But yeah, I'm very happy to share the slide deck with you if that's helpful. So yeah, maybe final 2-minute wrap up of any takeaways, what stuck with you, or I don't know if you have a traditional way of doing that, Fernando and Carol.
Just looking for the chat here.
Yeah.
Did you get Carolina
Yeah, I can put in the chat.
Yeah.
Yeah, usually we do like a short storm, but here it won't be like so much like a storm.
Sprinkle.
It'd be like
a light rain.
A light rain.
A light rain. And so what was valuable to you from today's gathering? So just write in the chat and don't press enter yet. We're gonna do that together. Okay, if you're ready, show your hands and 1, 2, 3, go.
Yeah, lots of good ideas. Shannon, could you share the? Oh, here it is.
I thought I hit send. I guess not.
Yeah, now it is there.
There's always a little shower that comes,
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, I also love the examples, the stories, so many ideas. Sometimes we do this kind of work, but it's not in the proper place. And I think this framework helps us to put things in the right spot. That was very good. Yeah, awesome. Please share the slide decks with Marisa and Shannon. Thank you so much, Zoe. It was very nice to listen to the examples and hear the stories. Marisa, Shannon, want to share something verbally?
Just thank you. There's so many ideas floating around, so that's yeah. Thank you.
Good.
Yeah, I thought it was great. Thanks for still doing it, even though it was a small group. I think that's awesome. And also, Zoe, wanted to ask you at the very beginning, you said when you did your wedding, you didn't want to have a language. What did you call it? A language silo, a language
ghetto.
Ghetto. That's what I thought you said. I was like, "Ooh, that was so good." I was thinking about that even with when people come in and they are like the same roles, so they stay with only people that do their role. Or I was like, okay, how could I use some of that? So yeah, I appreciated that. No, this was awesome. And honestly, I think it helps me. The Learning Arch design was a little bit challenging, a lot of it challenging, because what I facilitate are 2 hours, 4 hours, or 8 hours. And that Learning Arch design is, when you get to see people for a semester or a few weeks or whatever. And but hearing this today, I'm tying more things together. So that was awesome. Yeah, this was great. Thank you. And so nice to get to see you all.
Excellent. Thank you for coming. See you on the next one.
Sounds good. Bye-bye.
Bye, guys.